My name is Jennifer. Standing in my tiny apartment, looking at the message on my phone about the fully funded Second Chance Skills Van project, I'm taken back to that fateful wedding night. It was a defining moment that changed everything, pushing me from a state of silent sacrifice to a speaker of truth. My little brother, Ryan, was always my pride. Our parents passed away when we were young, leaving me, just in my early 20s, to take on the responsibility of raising him. I worked 2 jobs, sacrificing my college dreams and sleep. Every extra dollar went towards Ryan's future. I scrimped and saved so he could have a better life. I never asked for praise, and all I hoped for was a seat at his wedding, a moment to feel proud of the man he'd become. The wedding was held at an opulent country club. As I walked in, the grandeur was palpable. Everything was so polished and expensive that it felt like even the air was holding its breath. I found my table near the reception hall's edge, admired the white flowers, and reached for the name card beside my plate. The words on it made my blood run cold. Poor uneducated freeloader, a drain on her brother. For a split second, I thought I was hallucinating. But then the laughter started. It wasn't confused chuckles from strangers, it was gleeful mockery from the bride's family. They covered their mouths and leaned into each other, finding my humiliation a source of entertainment. Looking across the room at Ryan, all I could think was that I wouldn't ruin his special day. I was about to swallow the shame and leave when Ryan caught my hand. He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor and, with a calm voice that cut through the room, said, "You've just made the costliest mistake of your life." The bride's father, Mr. Thompson, was a wealthy and influential man. I'd only seen him in photos before. He was the smile in the background of every pre-wedding picture, the man whose daughter Ryan loved, and the one everyone seemed desperate to impress. As he slowly rose, adjusting his jacket, he had an air of superiority, as if he owned the right to define respect in that room. "Sit down," he sneered at Ryan. "You're embarrassing yourself." Ryan didn't budge. "Explain the card." Mr. Thompson glanced at it like it was an unexpected oddity, but we all knew it was pre-planned. "It was just a light joke. Your sister should be able to handle it." I kept my voice steady. "If it was a joke, why was I the target?" He retorted, "People like you take everything too personally. You've always struggled to understand your place." Ryan's hand tightened around mine. Mr. Thompson then went on to say that Ryan was lucky to be welcomed into his family, an opportunity that would open doors he'd never reach alone. I fired back, saying Ryan reached every opportunity through hard work. Mr. Thompson just laughed mockingly, insinuating that sacrifice didn't make someone equal to the wealthy. I thought about the countless nights I worked while others slept, the financial aid forms I filled out at midnight, and the times I pretended to be full so Ryan could eat. I said firmly, "I'm here as family, and I never asked to be equal to your money." But he scoffed, "Family isn't an excuse to barge into places you don't belong." Ryan then stepped beside me and said softly but with clear conviction, "She belongs wherever I stand." That's when Mr. Thompson's real self came out. He took out his phone and started threatening that job offers could be revoked, grants could be paused. He insinuated that pride had a price, and Ryan and I were about to learn it the hard way. Ryan just calmly replied, "Thank you for saying all this in front of witnesses." The bride, Sarah, had been standing frozen near the head table. Her face was pale, and she looked more like a bystander to a collapsing dream than a bride enjoying her wedding. Ryan asked her if she knew about the card. Her eyes welled up as she quickly shook her head and apologized. But Mr. Thompson laughed under his breath, saying not to apologize to those looking for offense. Sarah then snapped back at her father. That wasn't offense, it was humiliation. His wife rushed forward, trying to calm the situation. "Sweetheart, not here. There are people watching." But Sarah looked around the room and held her head high. "Good. Let them watch. I'm finally awake." She then told her father that she now understood the sacrifices I'd made for Ryan. She knew I'd given up college, worked multiple jobs, and raised Ryan when we were both children. Mr. Thompson tried to dismiss her concerns, but Sarah stood her ground. She questioned the reasons behind his control over their accounts after the wedding, and when he said it was a precaution, she demanded to know what it was for. The room had a palpable shift. The people who had laughed at me earlier now looked uncomfortable. They weren't suddenly moral, they were just afraid of the damage to their reputations. Sarah stepped beside Ryan and took his hand, warning her father that if he insulted me again, she'd walk out of her own wedding. Mr. Thompson couldn't believe his daughter would choose us over him. He genuinely thought that money and status were enough to keep her in line. But Sarah was resolute. She declared that her father was the one throwing away the family, not her. Nevertheless, Mr. Thompson's threats weren't just empty words. The next morning, Ryan called me in a hoarse voice. He did it. The job offer was gone. The company, Anderson Enterprises, sent an email saying they'd changed their direction. And worse, the foundation put my second chance skills van project on hold pending further review. I was heartbroken, but I also knew I couldn't let my anger get the better of me. A little later, Sarah and Ryan came to my apartment. Sarah, without her wedding finery, looked younger and more vulnerable. She placed her phone on the table and showed me an email chain from the wedding planner, proving that the insulting place card had been a premeditated act. Her father's assistant had submitted the offensive wording 3 days before the wedding, with detailed instructions to place it exactly at my seat. Then, Sarah played voice memos. In one, her father said Ryan needed to learn where loyalty belonged, and if he didn't, they'd teach him scarcity. In another, he belittled poor people, saying their survival stories were just failure masked in good storytelling. Ryan was furious and wanted to post the evidence right away, but I held back. I knew that if we did it in a rush, Mr. Thompson would spin the story, painting us as emotional and unstable. I suggested we give him a chance to apologize in a family meeting. Sarah understood what I meant and agreed to set up the meeting. The meeting was held at Mr. Thompson's grand estate in Westchester. As we drove through the gates, I squeezed Ryan's hand, just like he'd done at the wedding. Sarah was quiet but determined. She'd lost her father's financial support, but there was a new strength in her. When we entered the formal sitting room, Mr. Thompson didn't even stand up. He was sitting there like a king on his throne, surrounded by the smell of old money, leather, and artificial flowers. Let's be efficient. I assume you're here because you've come to your senses, he said. I calmly replied, we're here because Sarah asked for a private conversation before this goes public. You can admit your wrongdoings, stop interfering with Ryan's job, restore the grant review, and apologize for humiliating me at the wedding. Or you can keep acting like cruelty is leadership. Mr. Thompson laughed, thinking I was making an empty threat. He started demeaning people like us, saying we confused struggle with character and that surviving hardship didn't entitle us to respect. Ryan was on the verge of exploding, but I told him to sit down. Sarah also tried to stop her father, but he kept going. He even offered me a large sum of money to permanently stay out of Ryan's life. I think everyone has a price, and people like you find it quickly, he said with a smirk. Sarah, however, stood firm. Keep your money. I'd rather start my life with nothing than take comfort from a father who thinks kindness is weakness. That's when I placed my phone on the table and played all the recordings. Mr. Thompson's face turned white. His wife covered her mouth in shock, and the family attorney quickly told him not to say another word. He tried to save face and told us to get out. Sarah simply said, "That's the first honest thing you've said all week." In the car, Sarah finally said, "Post it." And so I did. I posted the evidence with a simple statement, explaining what had happened and that this was about the injustice of powerful people treating working-class lives as disposable. The story went viral quickly. By noon, it was all over Reddit. By evening, it had spread across TikTok and Instagram. People from all walks of life shared their stories of sacrifice and being treated unfairly. Teachers, nurses, older siblings, they all wrote in, expressing their support and sharing their similar experiences. The next day, Anderson Enterprises offered the job back to Ryan, but he declined. He said he wanted to work somewhere that valued integrity without public shaming. The foundation also restored the grant review, apologized, and within a week, the skills van received more donations than I'd raised in 2 years. The Thompson family faced severe consequences. The company board launched an internal review, a city partnership for one of their hotel projects was suspended, and Mr. Thompson was removed from several honorary positions. But the most significant loss for him was Sarah. She and Ryan moved into a small apartment near mine, filled with second-hand furniture but full of peace. A few months after the wedding, Mr. Thompson showed up at my door alone. He looked deflated, saying, "I was wrong. I told him, you thought money could buy everything, but it can't buy character, family, or respect when you've shown your love is conditional." I closed the door gently, not out of weakness, but because I'd finally reclaimed my dignity. I've learned that real strength comes from standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, and the truth will always prevail.